invited to a murder. Arlington Grange, home of wealthy Mrs. Peacock, whose tasteful collection of art and antiques is famous throughout the county. Colonel Mustard, ex-SAS officer, a welcome guest at the Grange where he enjoys dinner, a game of snooker, and the attentions of Miss Scarlett. Reverend Green, forever grateful to Mrs. Peacock for her generous support. Through her, he could realize his dream of a mole sanctuary. Professor Plum, American businessman whose shady interest in stocks and shares presently takes second place to his romantic pursuit of Miss Scarlett, who lives at the Grange with her stepmother. Her life is an entertaining round of parties, encouraging the affections of several men. Mrs. White, housekeeper and cook, she's particularly proud of her catering, especially when a famous guest is expected. 6 people with murder on their minds.
Good evening. A murder has been committed at Arlington Grange. To solve that crime, we have to discover who did and in which room the murder took place, in classic Cluedo style. And here to unravel the clues using both deduction and elimination, the man I'm sure who knows a thing or two about faulty dinner guest, Andrew Sachs. Have you ever played a detective?
Yes, twice in the West End, several times in Rep, I think, and Father Brown, a clerical sleuth of G.K. Chesterton on radio.
Me. Your partner in crime?
Ah, this is the lady on whom I rely. This is Dee Williamson, who is a legal executive in a criminal practice in Liverpool. Though what crimes they commit there, I don't know. Tell us about it, Lee.
Have you always been in the legal side of it, though?
Yes, I have. I was policewoman in Liverpool many years ago, and store detective also in Liverpool many years ago.
Goodness me.
But now I'm on the other side. I hasten
Formidable
to
foe this evening. For you, another well-known face whose first television role was indeed as a detective, Keith Barron. But you weren't the man in blue, Keith, were you?
No, I was a plainclothes policeman, Detective Sergeant Swift. My first television job here, actually, in about 1743. It's taken that long to ask me back. I'm very pleased this evening to have by my side Miss Harriet Cousins. She's a customs officer from Gwent and an expert in Cluedo.
Now, Harriet, I mean, customs and excise are all about drug bust, for example. Do you get any experience with murder itself?
Oh, no experience at all.
But you have played Cluedo before?
Yes, I'm the Welsh national champion.
Say no more. Our detectives. Our investigations indicate that tonight one of these 6 weapons was used to commit the murder. A billiard cue, this antique pistol, some poison, an antique sword, a bow tie, and finally, this paperweight. Oh, and there's another part of the mystery for our detectives to solve. In which room at the Grange did the murder actually take place? Was it in the drawing room, in the study, the kitchen, the dining room? Was it the billiard room? Or was it in the library? And now to the evidence. In the events leading up to the murder, Mrs. Peacock has invited Peregrine Talbot Wheeler, the famous art critic and presenter of television's Antiques Treasure Trail, to dinner at the Grange in the hope that he would value her art collection. We join Mrs. Peacock and some of her guests in the drawing room.
Have you read this article, Mother? He sounds awfully full of himself. Let's start without him.
No, we can't. You don't invite the star of the Antiques Treasure Trail to dinner and then eat it before he arrives.
I don't see why you had to have Peregrine Talbot Wheeler value your collection at all. The insurance company could have done it just as well. I'm starving.
Cheer up, Vivian. You're always saying you want to go on a diet.
So, you can come over.
Mr. Talbot Wheeler.
Good evening.
Mr. Talbot Wheeler, so glad you could meet.
Dear lady.
Mr. Talbot Wheeler, it's an honor for us to have you here.
The honor, dear girl, is all mine.
Shall we go through? I'll introduce you all during the first course, boys. I do so enjoy the antique treasure trail, Mr. Talbot Wheeler. I do think you do a marvellous job of explaining things.
You do? I must confess that I loathe the wretched program.
Dear, you don't enjoy being on the television?
Not in the least, dear lady. It pays the bills, that's all. I prefer the world of the arts. I would far rather spend an evening looking at a well-crafted piece of furniture than some plastic goggle box. Television is a shallow, proletarian medium.
But surely it must be wonderful, being able to tell a person that the little jug they've had in the attic all those years is worth tens of thousands.
If you like that sort of thing. I prefer the other extreme. Take some greedy prole who hasn't an artistic bone in his body and thinks that antiques are just money in another form. And you tell him that his £10,000 masterpiece is merely a mass-produced piece of schlock and not even worth £10. It's things like that make the job more tolerable.
Mrs. Peacock, what is this dish?
Veal in white wine.
Veal? I'm eating veal?
Yes, it is rather difficult to tell, isn't it?
And what's that supposed to mean? Oh, I'm sure that Mr. Talbot Wheeler didn't mean anything.
I meant that it tastes odd. Have you ever cooked veal before?
I have, but people are usually there to eat it when it's ready and not 3 hours later. I'm sorry, Mrs. Peacock. I'll go and see to the desserts.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Talbot Wheeler. I do apologize.
I quite understand. It must be so difficult getting servants in the country.
Actually, it wasn't the cooking I was worried about. I don't believe in eating veal.
Really? How fascinating.
The vicar has a point, really. Some calves are kept in terrible conditions, but this isn't white veal, so it wasn't produced by mistreating the animal.
Is agriculture your subject, then?
No, finance is my game, but I do have a controlling interest in a major food company.
Ah, a whiz kid, eh?
Yeah.
And there was I thinking that you were only a professor because it's easier to become one in America. After all, they don't have enough heritage there to understand about titles, do they?
What do you expect from a country that pronounces lieutenant, lieutenant?
True. Mind you, they're not so bad about hanging on to titles that don't really belong to them anymore.
Starring John Hurt, Anthony Hopkins, and Roy Hattersley.
Ill-mannered, boorish, self-satisfied, ignorant. Mr. White, are you listening to me?
Oh, what, dear? Oh, yes, of course. Yes.
Oh, you don't care, do you? All afternoon I spent slaving over a hot stove. He arrives 3 hours late and incinerates that my cooking isn't good enough for him. Well, I hope that veal poisons him.
This is more your style, Professor. Mississippi card sharps used to use these. Quiet, efficient, easy to hide. Quite the professional's weapon. Now, this is altogether a more aristocratic piece. Not rare, of course, but quite pleasant just the same. Not worth anything, but nice to have.
What? My great-great-grandfather used it at the Battle of Balaclava.
Really? I suppose the Mississippi card sharp was a relative too,
Here.
Aha! So this is your Rembrandt. Marvelous. Well, well. Please, did Rembrandt have to paint with a rabble at his elbow? He did not. And am I to judge his work when nobody gives me any light? Please, I'll rejoin you later.
Shall I stay, Peregrine?
No, I must have absolute quiet, please.
I know, Talbot Wheeler doesn't seem the type to lend his support to conservation. But I think with the right approach, he might be persuaded. Do you think I should show him the plans to my mole sanctuary?
Jonathan, I really don't think
Yes,
that would...
I'll go get them. They're just in the car.
Yeah? Well, this yank could beat you anytime, any place.
Well, that sounds like a challenge to me.
Right on, Viv.
Well, I almost feel sorry for you.
I'll have you know I was the campus champion.
You'll find snooker a bit different from pool.